Sandland is one of the most anticipated anime of the year, considering it was the last anime created by Akira Toriyama before unfortunately passing away, who was the creator of Dragon Ball. So there's a lot of hype for this anime. But is this anime looking promising for us Christians to watch? Let's get into it. What's going on, fam? Welcome to the Adonime podcast, where we watch anime with the redemptive eyes of a Christian believer. My name is Manny, and today we're going to be jumping in to the first episode of Sandland, the series, where I'll go over the scenes and share my thoughts and or concerns as they happen. So this anime is falling under the genres of action, adventure, fantasy, and supernatural. And it's made by the studios Sunrise, Anima, and Kamikaze Duga. And the first episode aired the 20th of March 2024, and it's rated PG-13. And I think at the moment PG-13 is a pretty decent age. I haven't seen anything too crazy that's for mature adults, but there's a lot that we're going to get into this episode, so let's go ahead and start. So the episode starts out in a dark desert at night where we see two soldiers driving in a truck who are out on a mission to find water. And one of them is complaining that he wants to fight and he didn't sign up for this. And the other guy is more serious and he doesn't complain, but he tells them they're entering demon territory. So the complainer gets excited and says he's going to take them all out. He pulls out his gun and he pretends to shoot at the demons. But the serious guy says not to underestimate them. And in that moment, the complainer sees a shadow in the side mirror of the car and he gets concerned. But then they brush it off for a moment, and there's a moment of silence while they're driving, and bam, a shadow appears on the windshield, and they lose control and they crash. Once they finally confront the group of demons and start shooting, the demons aren't really affected by the shooting much. They get a little affected, but it's not anything lethal. And one of them acts kind of childish, complaining about the hit, and they start approaching the soldiers, and then the scene goes dark as the soldiers scream in the background. So at this moment, I'm getting a little worried. Obviously, the fact that these are demons and it looks like the childish one is the main character makes me think, oh boy, in what way is he a demon, first of all? And second of all, is he actually bad or is it just a bad rumor? Like people could be saying that he is a demon when he actually is not a demon. It's just by maybe what he looks like and that's it. It could be that he's called a demon because he fights in the dark, but could he actually be good? I don't know. But let's keep going. The scene cuts to the next one, and we see a man in a cowboy hat who looks to be a sheriff driving in daylight in a very quiet city in the desert that looks mostly abandoned. And he stops at a store, and it becomes evident that it's a struggle to buy or find water in this remote area. Then him and the shopkeeper observe the TV where the king of the land addresses the lack of water and announces he's going to give it out for a discount. And it's a embarrassingly small discount for the public, which sounds like garbage to the two men, obviously. Then the scene cuts to the sheriff who's gone to a water well with some of the villagers, and they have no luck getting any water, and it doesn't look like it's going to rain anytime soon. So everyone is very worried, obviously, and they start asking Sheriff Rao, we find out his name now, to help them in some way. He asks them to be a little patient so that he can see what he can do. We then see Sheriff Rao by himself leaning on his vehicle when he sees a bright blue bird chirping on a tree. He's intrigued with this bird, and then he gets interrupted by a young child that runs to him with fresh water bottles. When Rao asks the child where he got it from, he says a demon gave him some. And the scene turns to the same group of demons from earlier, running in the daylight, yelling and enjoying their run that consists of a centurion, a fox, a ghost, a bug-looking creature, I don't even know how to explain him, and the main demon, who looks to be a prince. So here, I'm starting to worry a bit more about where the story is going. They're depicting demons as saviors or helpers, but again, are they actually demons or just labeled that way? That's important to consider, but Anime has a reputation of including demons in their storylines, but they're not always bad, quote unquote, and they're actually misunderstood by the society, which happens in real life, not necessarily with demons. And that's a very dangerous thought pattern for us Christians. But let's keep going and find out more. So the gang starts talking about how the fiend prince was nice to give a young boy water, the one we just saw a moment ago, as we see them pulling a cart with fresh water on it. The fiend prince seems embarrassed by the comment and says he'll pick on the boy when he grows up, almost like paying back the good that he did with some evil later on, so that he's not so embarrassed. So it's common for these demons to do bad things and they themselves own up to it. So that's pretty important. They start talking about going to get the king's water load, but the fiend prince says to be patient until there are more humans as they don't want them to go extinct. This is a little confusing. So they arrive to their home, what looks more like a hideout, with the water for everyone there, and they all indulge in drinking while someone that looks like a chief urges the prince to help Slime, one of their mates, with some water, which he does, and he questions, how did the world get like this? Then we see the Sandland logo. So on the next scene, we see Sheriff Rao driving on the desert land, while the narrator gives details about the context of the story, and he starts saying that the world turned into a desert 50 years ago, and humans started fighting for water. The rains stopped and the rivers ran dry, and now water only comes from one source, which is controlled by the king. And that seems pretty cruel. And I started thinking about this, and maybe I'm going a little bit too deep. But think about it for a moment in this way. A land with no water, and everyone is looking for water, even demons. But only the king of the land controls the water, and this makes the king seem selfish, obviously. Some people actually think this way about God. Let me explain. God claims to be the source of life and joy, and outside of him is nothing. People who oppose God all are looking for happiness and joy and meaning, but they have tough times and blame God for those tough times. They have a misconception of God, that he's greedy, that he's a dictator and only cares about his own glory and only gives his joy and life to his people. He offers life to a dying world, but at a high cost, the death to self. It sounds familiar to the high cost of this king of the land who has the source of water and offers just a little tiny discount, but it's still a very high price. So, this is dangerous thinking because the person opposing God doesn't understand how evil and dead they truly are. They don't see that God is the essence and fountain of everything that is good, and he even gives that person moments of joy. The book of Matthew, chapter 5, verses 43 to 45 says, "You have heard that it was said, 'You shall love your neighbor and hate your enemy.' But I say to you, love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you, so that you may be sons of your Father who is in heaven. For he makes his sun rise on the evil and on the good, and sends rain on the just and on the unjust." So we see here God's present mercy on all people and desires his people to follow his example. They also don't understand that dying to yourself, which is what Jesus requires to follow him for eternal life, means dying to evil because we are born sinful. They think they're good people, but who are we to define what good is? Is not a penalty for a lawbreaker much greater when it's done against someone of high stature? It's not necessarily what you do, but who you do it against. A slap in the face to your brother is not the same as a slap in the face to the King of England. The consequences are very different. Imagine a holy God who is the ruler and King of Kings. How much more a single sin done against a Lord of Lords? And if it were only a single sin, it would be tragic enough. But we sin all the time, whether we notice it or not. We've sinned against a holy God, and a just God has to be just and have us put to death. So we have to understand dying to ourselves is a high cost. But is it that high compared to spiritually dying for eternity? In order for a dirty cup to be used to drink, you have to clean it inside and out. Remove all the bad in order to pour clean water in it. We have to deny our sinful flesh, our desire to only please ourselves, where we have made ourselves the God that we serve, and instead throw it all away and take in the water that God gives that is truly good, where we experience a rebirth and we are born again. We die to ourselves so Jesus can revive us from the dead. Jesus paid the price for our sins on the cross with his blood and died and went into the tomb and invited us into the tomb with him so that we can also die to ourselves and be raised again just like him. God is not an evil dictator. He commands us to worship because that is where we find freedom and joy. When we put our eyes on Jesus and not ourselves, we are free from the pains and worries of this world. Why would God keep us from that? But people think, oh, he's a worship hog because he's selfish. No, he's commanding us to drink from the fountain of life. Why would he not command us to do what's best for us? To experience life. His commandments are not burdensome. They come from a good God who loves you and wants the best for you. So if you decide to reject God, don't mistakenly reject him because of a misconception, because those who know God also reject that misconception. We reject that misconception. When you see God for who he truly is and do your own research and read for yourself, you'll see how he doesn't fit the misconceptions. He truly is the definition of love, but you have to experience it for yourself. So on that note, I just wanted to drop that. Let's continue on with the anime, but honestly, I really hope they don't imply all the things I just mentioned, but let's get back into it. So now we see some of the gang of demons playing video games with the Fiend Prince, and they hear the sheriff pull up in his vehicle. He nervously looks out at their hideout and introduces himself and says he needs their help. The Fiend Prince jumps in front of him and says he has guts to approach their hideout, and Rao asks if he's in charge, to which the Fiend Prince replies that the great King Lucifer is in charge, and he introduces himself as Beelzebub, the demon prince. And now I'm like, crap. Why? Why did they have to do this? It's frustrating because it's an anime from the same writer as Dragon Ball, and I want to like this anime. But really? Lucifer and Beelzebub? And Beelzebub is the protagonist of the show and most likely going to be portrayed as a hero. And for those that are unaware, Beelzebub is referred to in the Bible as the prince of demons. So at this point, I am on my freaking toes. Where are they going to go with this storyline? But let's keep going. Sheriff Rao then explains that he needs help finding the legendary spring and believes it's somewhere in the desert, and explained he saw a bright blue bird, which he called a waterfinch, and it feeds on freshwater fish, and since they nest in the north, that must mean they're going south for a spring with fish in it. For this reason, he wants to be accompanied by a demon, because it's dangerous to go to the South Desert. Beelzebub asks why he thinks they would help, and Rao brings up that a demon gave water to a child, to which Beelzebub embarrassingly says what kind of wimp would do that, when it was obviously him. Rao shows him a drawing from the kid, and it obviously looks like Beelzebub, exposing him. The chief, whose name we find out is Thief, challenges him to ask on whose accord he's doing this, and Rao says on his own, that the king is selfish, so they must find the spring themselves. When it seemed like they were going to reject him, Rao brings out a game console as a gift, which obviously some of them went crazy for, since we saw them playing a video game earlier. Finally, Beelzebub goes to Lucifer for permission, which he grants it. And Beelzebub holds an audition to see who else would go with him on the journey. And here we kind of see what each of them can do, but it turns out to be a pretty funny scene since they're not very impressive and they don't want to go. But in the end, Beelzebub chooses Thief to go with him, and they head out on their new adventure that'll take 5 days to reach. Thief is being a little grumpy about it, but they get excited when they get the chance to learn to drive the vehicle until a massive monster called the Geji Dragon appears and chases them through the desert. They manage to drop some of their load into its face and jump across a big hole in the ground to escape, but it turns out that in the load was a fuel reserve, water, and food. So they decide they're going to pass by a town close by. And on the way, Rao asks them their age. They start conversing with each other. And Beelzebub says that he's around 2,500 years old, and Thief is just a bit older than that. Rao asks them if things were better back then, and Beelzebub says things were never this bad, and that humans always cause trouble. Rao then says that's true, but not as much as demons, to which Beelzebub thinks it's a joke. He says demons are always up to no good, but they don't kill, unlike humans. Rao responds saying, you gotta be kidding. That legend says demons have brought humans enormous suffering, to which Thief responds saying humans have blamed demons for their misfortune since the beginning. That there was even a rumor saying that they caused the drought, but that makes no sense because they suffer without water too. Ra responds and says that if what they say is true, humans have misunderstood demons. Beelzebub then explains, to not get it twisted, that they really are bad, like when he didn't brush his teeth before bed or when he attacked the water truck. They just don't kill, but they've proudly done bad stuff. And when Beelzebub asks Rao what bad deeds he's done, he mentions he's killed quite a few people in the war, to which the demons were shocked and afraid of for a second. So this scene was pretty disturbing because it goes against truth. And one thing we need to get straight is that demons do kill. The book of John, chapter 10, verses 7 through 10. It says, "So Jesus again said to them, 'Truly, truly, I say to you, I am the door of the sheep. All who came before me are thieves and robbers, but the sheep did not listen to them. I am the door. If anyone enters by me, he will be saved and will go in and out and find pasture. The thief comes only to steal and kill and destroy. I came that they may have life and have it abundantly.'" In this scripture, the demons are the thieves and robbers, and they only come to steal, kill, and destroy. They have nothing good in them, and there is no redemption for them. The book of John, chapter 8, verses 42 to 44 says, "Jesus said to them, 'If God were your father, you would love me, for I came from God and I am here. I came not of my own accord, but he sent me. Why do you not understand what I say? It is because you cannot bear to hear my word. You are of your father the devil, and your will is to do your father's desires. He was a murderer from the beginning and does not stand in the truth, because there is no truth in him. When he lies, he speaks out of his own character, for he is a liar and the father of lies.'" So let's be very clear. The devil and the demons are not as childish and nonchalant as this anime makes them out to be, and it's dangerous for us to think of them as harmless. They do kill. They are not without guilt. They are very much guilty of going against holy God. But let's go ahead and finish off the episode. They continue driving along when they find themselves in a trap laid by some hooligans with weapons. They punctured the tires of the truck and they approach to attack, but Rao fights off most of them. He stops when one of them points a gun at him, and that's when Beelzebub jumps in, ready to fight, and then the episode ends. So, honestly, I had really high hopes for this anime, but the way it's looking, it's really uncomfortable, considering the names that they use and the whole demon factor. I have a feeling they're gonna make Beelzebub likable, relatable, and that's dangerous. I can already see people wearing gear of this anime talking about, oh, they love Beelzebub. Dude, man, that's just nuts to even think about. Like, this show so far is not headed in the right direction whatsoever. And I'm afraid it will subconsciously desensitize people from demons and the devil. They are not for us. They only want to destroy God's creation. I think if they were normal thugs or hoodlums and they use different names, we'd be talking about a whole different type of expectation. But this is just too much. And it's out in the open. There's no shame, there's no hiding it. So I'm fairly disappointed in the decision with the writing, and I don't see it getting any better for us Christians. We'll have to see where it leads, but it's not looking good. So that's it. What do you guys think? Let me know if you guys agree, disagree. Let me know on Instagram. You can follow us at Adonime Podcast. And I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. And until next time, grace and peace. Thank you guys so much for joining us on this episode of the Adonime Podcast. Don't forget to subscribe and leave us a rating. You can also follow us on Instagram at Adonime Podcast. Until next time, grace and peace.